All right, here it is. Post-trail rundown. What does that mean? This is going to be a mini podcast, maybe 5-10 minutes of a quick recap as to what the run was like that I was on today. And I figured this would be a good way to collect thoughts, information, things that might inspire and help others along their way. Mostly it's a recap, and it truly is a motivational thing, because the longer the runs, the more time you have to yourself, the more time you have to process the thoughts that are lingering, and maybe you tap into some thoughts that you were putting away, and you're forced to deal with them and to be with those thoughts. And I think that's what's really been a huge help for me and running, is I'm able to process all the thoughts that I can possibly get through in the time frame that I was running. So today, for this first episode, this first mini podcast of the trail rundown series, it was just short of 10 miles. My goal wasn't miles today. My goal was to be on my feet for 90 minutes, an hour and a half. And so we accomplished that. We had ground time of an hour and 33 minutes and 51 seconds. We covered 9.6 miles at a 9:42 pace. Now, what's cool about that is not only was it 9.68 miles at a 9:42 pace, but there was a huge mountain we climbed. So we ran up the side of it, ran over the top of it, and then down the other side of it. Tons of switchbacks, tons of moving parts, zero stopping. So I get it with trail running. There's, walk the uphills and walk where you need to, and you should be walking and training so that it mirrors the actual races. When I'm training for something, though, I'm going to push myself to extremes, and I want to know where my fail points are. And after how many miles of going grueling through some terrain, will it start to create a problem for my body if I am going to do a race and I'm trying to model both together, the race and my training? So what I did was, I was like, I'm not going to stop at all. So we didn't stop on the uphills. We didn't stop on the switchbacks. I just modified my pace. So my effort was the same. My pace got a little bit slower in some parts and a little bit faster in other parts, but I tried to maintain the same effort, the same output, so that I'm not overly taxing my body while I'm doing these things, so that I can be consistent and that I can also carry that for a longer period of time. So at the pace of 9:42, I was able to keep my heart rate on an average of 148. I did max it at 174. Some of those uphills were pretty brutal, and I told myself, we're not stopping. We're just going to keep getting these uphills regardless of how badly it feels. And we did. We kept going. It was tough, and it was fun and exciting. So I spent a lot of time in zone 2. Zone 2 is what I'm after. I'm hoping to continue to build my zone 2 and just spend, for this one, I think I spent, so if we ran for 90 minutes, 70 of the 90 minutes I spent in zone 2. 20 minutes we spent in zone 3, very little zone 4, very little zone 5. So, or even if there is a 5, I think there's a 5 on my watch. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And again, the average for me for this one was 148, which is pretty good, zone 2 stuff. And then I did see 20 minutes worth of zone 3, which also helps a ton. And again, I based my numbers off of a VO2 max test that I did. I had one done at the local gym that we train at, so that I would have true numbers, and then I punched those numbers in percentages, and now my watch is able to calculate all of that. Otherwise, you're just going to get a generic number based on age, weight, and then typical performance, which can be good and bad depending on what you're really after. But I really wanted to know my true numbers, and that's why I went for the VO2 max test. Power zones, we were in good power zones the whole time. Everything mirrors pretty much the heart rate zones. Elevation, this was the cool stuff. So from start to finish, we gained 843 feet, and then we lost or descended 846 feet, and then again, and then again. So if you would be able to see the graph, it goes flat tracking as we're getting to the mountain, hit the mountain, stay on top of the mountain, a little bit of a downhill with the switchbacks, and then back up, and then across again, and then down, and then all the way right back to finish. So during that whole time, your thoughts are racing. And just like they race when you're doing other things, like you're thinking about work and then something creeps in and you forgot to do this task, or you're thinking about some fun stuff, or you're with family and then other thoughts creep in. The beauty of the run is you're stuck there, you're at a cool cadence, your ground contact is almost the same. It's like bam, bam, bam. You have a good little pace going, a rhythm going. And when I enter a thought pattern or a thought sequence or some ideas, I notice that I can easily stray from them. So the goal of this conversation would be to tell you that when you have something that brings itself up to the forefront of your thoughts, sit with it and then try to think of it from every angle. Try to think of it from having a good outcome and then having negative outcomes and how that could affect things. And hopefully by having that thought and then hitting it from all angles, how would this play out if it played out for the best? How would this play out if it played out for the worst? Who would it affect? How would those effects then ripple through my community, my life? You know, it can be as grand as you want it to be, but ideally it's just your life cycle, what you're doing with the people around you, and how motivating that's going to be for you and for them. So a lot of it for me today was, we have a bunch of projects with Rogue Methods. We have some knife practices that we have coming up. We have gunfighter stuff coming up. I'm like, man, what is it that people need? And regardless of what's going on in the country, there is this weird thing with finances, and people are seeing themselves short of expendable income. And I get it, we all are. The point then would be, how do we still reach those people, keep them motivated, keep them in good spirits, allow them to train, and still keep them relatively comfortable financially, right? So if the training is worth it, it's worth it. And it has to be, right? Especially because people are giving up their time and their money. So as I'm running, I'm like, man, I could use a new pair of shoes. Well, a new pair of shoes right now is probably not the best option. Let's wear these bad boys down. And how cool would it be to have a pair of shoes that you beat down to the ground? So little things like that. So again, it all patterns and mirrors the idea of finances. Like, all right, well, what would this do here? And what about this? What are my non-negotiables? Well, are my non-negotiables food or this or sweet treats or eating out or doing something that just is not returning the investment? Like all these things just sit through and I think about it and I'm like, what's the best outcome for people? And for me, a lot of it is this: if you can stay in shape, right? And again, it's not even like a business pattern for us. We don't offer fitness programs or anything like that. And I mean, it's a great idea, but you can find that stuff for free everywhere, unless you just like the way I do things. And I'm pretty extreme. If I start running, I run. If I start combat sports, I do combat sports pretty hard. And then I find something to test it. So I'll enter tournaments or I'll enter races. So for me, I think I have 4 races coming up that are going to be leading me into the Cocodona 250. Which I'm signed up for May of next year, which is going to be fantastic. That's going to be the biggest race I've done. And I'll get more into like how and when I started training and running and all that stuff. And I haven't been running very long, like at least not at this volume and this consistently. I think I started in January of this year. So 5-6 months. And the one thing that I saw across the board from all the other running folks that I started to like and kind of see what they were doing as far as training goes was just time on the ground. The more time you can spend on your feet, figuring out what's going to ache, where the tweaks are, you'll start to realize what you need most for you to be successful in this sport. And one of the big ones for me was I was heavy. I was really heavy when I started running. I was probably 210 and now I'm like 180. So I've been shredding a bunch. Yeah, sure, I lost a ton of muscle mass. Who cares? I also lost a bunch of fat, a lot of the size. And I liked being big. Like we all like being big, but I kept some of it, which I'm happy about. But now that I'm running at 180, I think I could run even better at 170. I could probably run better at 150 or 160, but that's a little low. I'd like to keep some size. But yes, all of those little factors. And you can see where I'm going with like the train of thought, right? As we're running, you're just going from place to place in your thoughts. And I'm coursing through everything from the first run I've ever done to this run to the first race to the second to everything that I'm doing. And then I'm trying to and you're seeing it, right? I'm getting hit with all of these thoughts. And more than anything, it comes in your moments of being fatigued, or when you're starting to be like, man, this is getting tough. You start getting bombarded to get distracted. And then finally you're like, so much is going on. I'm just going to walk a little bit, and I'm just going to, cruise a little bit so I don't have to feel like I'm getting overwhelmed by information, not only in my thoughts, but the way I'm breathing, the way my body aches. And that's the beauty for me of running, is it allows me to be like, oh no, we're not getting away from this. We're going to spend some time here. We're going to focus on this little bit. We're going to clear this little nugget up. We're going to think it through from every single direction until we have what we think is best for that problem. And then maybe we'll revisit it again later. Maybe you don't. But if you do, at least you have this whole thought out set of events in your mind to this problem that's sitting and lurking. And then if you talk about it with somebody else and they provide a little bit of insight, all of these things play into, and it just collects and collects and collects into this little sphere, this little thing that you can tap into. And again, it's just like this, it's like mind mapping, right? It's the problem and all the things that spiderweb out of it. And now you've at least filled in those bubbles and you have resources of thought. So if you can do that to one thought process, you can do it to another, and little by little you start thinking through all of your problems, and you don't put them or push them aside, and you don't leave them for another time. Again, this is why I find running to be so freaking awesome. And I run with nothing. I don't run with music. I don't take headphones. Most of the time I don't even take my phone unless I'm going to film some sort of content. But for the most part, it's just something sharp in case I have to cut stuff, and then chapstick. And even then I forget chapstick sometimes. I don't even wear a hat. I wear a bandana just to collect the sweat, and my watch. So anything for me under 10 miles or up to 10 miles, I don't even carry water. I just get it. My body should be good enough to do that, and it's training. I'm not preparing specifically for a race. If I was like closer to race time, I would be carrying water and food and snacks and stopping to walk a little bit and eat in those walking points, and it would be just a different strategy. Right now, I want to maximize my ability to be on my feet and move and go faster and just cover ground and not worry about having all this extra stuff. And it's really warm out. I think it's like 90 degrees already. And so I don't want to lug so much stuff around that it makes my run cumbersome. So when I run under 10 miles, I pack almost no gear, super slick, just we're going. When I do go into the 12s, the 15s, the 20s, then I'll pack a snack, definitely pack some water, and then I'm fueling early. So with this 10-mile run, I'm not even fueling at all, right? So I'm not taking anything in for those 10 miles until I get home, and I drink some water, and then replenish with electrolytes and all that good stuff, right? But it would be different if I was carrying fluids and food, because then I would, at like mile 4, I would start introducing a little snack. Mile 5, now we're drinking a little bit more, and 7, we're doing something, and every 2 to 3 miles you're replenishing I'm looking to replenish my body for the next 5 post 10 run. So after the 10 miles, I'm starting at mile 4, I'm starting to prep for miles 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 by introducing water, introducing electrolytes, introducing snacks, little things that can carry me the next 5, that can carry me the next 10. But that's a conversation for another time, how I would create a strategy or plan to eat for those later miles. Right now, it's all about this 10 miles and under an hour and a half on my feet minimum, or an hour minimum, 90 minutes. Between an hour and 90 is my goal, 60 to 90 minutes. And then if I can squeeze in a 2-hour run or a 3-hour run, now we're looking at good numbers. Ideally, as we get closer to the races, I'm looking at 2 to 4 hours of ground time. 5, even if I can squeeze a 5 in, I should be able to knock out maybe 30 miles in 6 hours. So my last 50K was almost 7 hours, 6:57. So yeah, about 7 hours. But it was a gnarly climb up the Bradshaws. And so I think if we're running this flat and we're only gaining about 1,000 feet of elevation per mountain, I could probably knock a 30 miler, 31.1 in, I would say 6 hours would be a good time. So I do have a 50K coming up, and that's my goal, 6 hours. We'll see how that goes. One plan can lead to other things, and something can happen and it might change everything. But having a goal allows me to see that. So I use the information from the 1 hour block and the 2 hour blocks, the 3 hour blocks, how I feel. I'll make a quick rundown. I put a note in my phone. It asks you, which is really cool. Like, hey, how was your run today? And like, man, between miles 1 and 3, I had this weird kink in my knee and it just wouldn't shake out until I just like really gave it a few pumps and loaded it heavy, and then something reset itself. And now here we are. We ran clearly with it. No problems afterwards. And then when you get back, where am I the most sore? Where am I the most tight? Give those areas some love and some attention. Make sure that you're focusing on the parts that hurt the most, but you're also covering all the other parts of the run. Your lower back, your upper back, your traps, the way your arms are kind of like holding your neck in place, and your head. We have this cool little thing in our heads where our eyes can stay focused, but the rest of our bodies can be moving, which is pretty cool about our eyes. And so when I'm running, like everything's bouncing, but my eyes are tracking the trail, so I don't jump onto a snake and I have time to jump over a snake. So this was the only run this week and last week that I didn't see a rattlesnake on my run, which I was surprised. So there was no snakes out today. Last time there was one sleeping, kind of just skirted by it. The other one, which was really cool, I really wanted to do a video then, but here we are doing a video now. This little dude is crossing one of the trails. I make a big turn on a switchback. I stop with big stomps, and I look at him, and he's kind of elongated, but then he coils himself up, props up, looks at me, rattles his little rattle a little bit. I look at him, and I'm just like palms forward, like, hey, I'm not interested in hurting you or even hurting myself by getting close to you. I get it. You were just crossing, and I came running up on you. And so he decided to drop himself down and continue to slither away as he cleared the trail rocks. And I knew his head was out of reach. His little tail was coming out. His rattle was up. I high-fived his little rattler, and then I kept running. And I thought that was super cool, a little coup de grace, but without killing the animal, obviously. So that is their habitat. I'm running through it. No need to mess with them. They didn't want to mess with me. The last time I had to jump over one. Good thing it was already elongated as it was crossing, and I just did a leap over it, and it didn't have time to coil or shoot or do anything weird. But a little bit of understanding of the environment, what's out there, where you might see these little dudes, and then knowing that the anti-venom that they use here in Arizona pretty much covers all species. So even then, you don't have to kill it and bring it with you unless you want to. That's entirely up to you. But yeah, environmental hazards. Run fast, jump high. As an old Army buddy used to say, jump up, kick down. If one of my Army buddies is watching, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. That dude was trained in the art of ninjutsu, which is pretty interesting. I thought he was kind of cool, but either way. So again, as you can see, even with this very first trail running shakedown podcast, is the thought processes take you everywhere. And again, that's one of the biggest things that I enjoy so much about trail running and being on the go in the open environment of the Arizona deserts, is thoughts come and go. And it allows you to pick one. Bam, that's the one I want to focus on today. We'll put it down, boom, hit it with the mental map, see it from all angles, maybe bring it home, ask the old lady what she thinks about this, this, and that, and you get some more feedback. Utilize all that to help solve your problems. And if you can't solve it, ask somebody who might have dealt with something like that before. And don't be left behind. Know that there are people that care about you and that want to see you succeed, and that they will help you. I'm here. I don't have all the answers to all the things, but if I know something about it, I'm definitely willing to share. So if you guys have comments, questions, future podcast ideas, let me know, and I'll handle those for you guys. Later.